So, I'd like to call the September 24th, 2019 Board of Library Trustees meeting to order. It is 7:03, and we have a quorum. We know that two of our members couldn't be here tonight, Kevin McKenna and Anne Reberg. So, first thing is to look at the minutes from the last few meetings, and I want to compliment you, Lisa, on what a fine job and how detailed they are.
Thank you.
It's really very impressive.
Yeah, she does a great
Thank
job.
you.
Yeah.
Really
I
good.
take pride in the minutes.
Yes, yes, you should.
Yeah,
You really
me too.
do.
That's great.
It's a great record. Where do we keep these?
They are kept in my office and online.
Oh, they're online too. Okay, and on our library webpage? Okay. All right, so if people want to see what's happening, they can find it there. All right, so first we actually had two meetings. The first one was on June 25th, and that was our regular June meeting. Anybody find anything they wanted to talk about there, or any modifications? I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, they are approved. Okay, then the second set of minutes was the one that we had earlier in this September to get the search committee underway. Any comments or corrections on those?
I wasn't here,
So you caught up?
I caught up, but I don't know if anything was.
Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is the monthly report of the library director.
It's in the packet.
The sign going out from
I'm sorry, Jeff.
the sign that's going to go on
At
Main
the
Street
lower
entrance,
entrance, yes,
yeah.
that's been kind of in hiatus for about a year and a half or two
Okay.
almost. So it's a sign that's similar to the seal on the Burns Bridge, you know, the Shrewsbury
okay.
seal sign. It's much smaller, but it's still pretty large. And it will go out in front of the courtyard fence facing out to the street. And it will have the word Shrewsbury Public Library on it instead of Town of Shrewsbury, but it's using the image from the seal.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Sounds pretty nice.
This was donated back in 2016, but it's taken us a long time to. It had the work was done at Marlboro Foundry to create the seal. At this stage, it's with Sunshine Sign Company, who's building the base for installing the sign, and then it goes to a painter to paint the sign before it gets installed. So it's been a long time. It's gone through HDC approval and all that. So
Well, that's good.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, back in 2017, I think it was.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a donation, by the way, from Mr. Turkanian.
He's given a lot.
So generous, hasn't
Yes.
he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, financial and legislative, we've got a number of reports. First is our fiscal year to date report. Looked to me like we were right on schedule there, as usual.
With one question that always or might come to mind is the issue with professional services fully expended, and that has to do with the fact that that's for our annual membership in our library consortium, and that gets spent in one invoice at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Yeah. Okay, so good work staying on budget.
Especially in this day and age.
Yes. A lot of people can't do that.
This time of year it's pretty easy.
Yeah, we're not too far in yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we approve that? Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I was just, one question I did have was, repair and maintenance of equipment a lot was expended because you were bringing things up to date?
That has to do mainly with contracts, Joan. A
Oh,
lot
okay.
of those are with technology-related contacts, such
Okay.
as for our automated handling system,
Okay.
our self-check systems, and some of the, the technology services we provide for the
Oh,
public,
okay.
some of the kind of maintenance software that runs and protects those.
Okay.
So,
And maybe I shouldn't ask this,
no, it's okay.
is the self-checkout and whatever
Yes,
working?
Yes, I know, I hate to say it
I
about
know,
it.
I hate
Things
to
have
ask
been very,
this too, but.
things have been very steady since
Good.
Linkso has
Taken-
won that contract
Oh,
and
good.
has implemented some fixes to the door, which was the major
It's more
problem
the
they were
outdoor,
having.
it's the outdoor part, right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been very good.
Oh, good.
We've had a
Such a
couple,
frustration
you
to
know, a
the
couple days, not days, a couple incidents, but that's to be expected with anything that complex, you
Yeah.
know. So it's been a much better experience.
Good.
Yes, very happy with Linkso.
I hope I haven't jinxed it.
No, I know, I've had some wood to knock on.
Yeah.
Can I have a move to approve that then?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have trust fund report, the last quarter and the fiscal year 19 summary. Kind of looks like we're chugging along.
Yes, things are improving a bit in terms of values
They
and,
changed.
yeah, I
Yes.
know, I should, again, we should maybe knock on wood, but this is the report that, the summary, the annual summary, is the report that you use, that you have voted by policy to use the interest earned from the previous year as the maximum amount to be spent for the coming fiscal year on library materials or whatever you designate it. So I just want to point out that $11,129 was the interest earned on the trust funds in fiscal year 19.
Yep.
Okay.
And I have a question, some of these, how do these funds get started? Because some of them are very tiny, you know, and
Right.
it almost,
So,
I wonder if they're, you
yeah,
know, they could be
some of the-
consolidated
I think that there
in
was
some
a
way.
look at that back
Mhm.
when George Strom did some work around this, and some of those were consolidated as they were able to,
Mhm.
but others would have required extensive court time
Oh,
to
okay.
change the trust itself. So some of them were, I think we talked about it in a previous meeting, some were accepted as trust funds, or maybe it would have been more appropriate to accept them as gifts that could have been expended in full. So I think we're more careful about that now if we accept gifts, that we don't think of them as trust funds unless there's a sizable amount in that gift to make sense for that. So I think that's
Yeah, and
that's
some of them,
the
you know, we made,
situation.
you know,
Mhm.
sense on,
Right,
on
yeah.
some of them.
right, and
Um,
and some that are very small are dedicated to such specific purposes that it's almost hard to use them.
Mhm, mhm. I'm sure we pay management fees on them, that's what I was
The
thinking.
town, I'm sure does. They manage these, and as you might notice, if you were to look at the full report online, you see funds from other departments, they manage them all together.
Yeah, well, we're not as bad off as the schools, it has some funds with zero.
Yes.
And so the fund is there, but there's no money. Okay, motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I guess we probably are accepting rather than approving.
Yeah.
Then the draft budget goals for fiscal year 2021, Ellen's been working on those.
Right, and this is the time of year we just set the goals and concept only, and ask for your approval so that we can move forward to putting some numbers to the concepts. So as is typical, we always start with certification, being clear that we meet certification standards. One thing I want to point out that might be a bit of a challenge this year is that there's some new interpretation coming out of the Board of Library Commissioners on the materials expenditure requirement. As you know, they require us, as a population of our size, we have to spend 13% of our budget on library materials, and that's a figure we're always careful to watch. At a recent training on the state aid division, one of the state aid administrators mentioned that they were looking to enforce an interpretation of the materials expenditure requirement that said only material expenditures for materials that are used beyond your local community can be counted towards your materials expenditure requirements. So an example of what might not be counted any longer would be things like museum passes, which we limit to Shrewsbury residents, or hotspots, or some of the tools, that kind of thing. I brought up the question of some of the databases, which we limit to residents only. It would be the only way we could afford it. We couldn't afford to offer some of that online content more broadly. That
Is that
if you
because
were
of the way that the rules are set up for the databases? Is it by user numbers or
it's a
something?
good question. Yeah, so some are, some online content that we purchase, the vendor only will sell to you for your population base or for your library card base. Others will allow you to choose. Let's say one of our streaming music providers, they allow you to make the choice. Is it only Shrewsbury residents or beyond? We choose only Shrewsbury residents to allow access because of cost reasons. We wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. So I did do a bit of pushback on that new interpretation of an existing regulation, and other library directors that were at that meeting expressed concern about that as well. Since then, I have heard back from the state staff, that they will not count the databases, but they are looking at other issues. I happen to serve on the State Aid Advisory Committee, the newly formed one. So I plan to make that a push, that they consider the impact, as I think many communities would not be able to sustain something like a certain museum pass to Davis Farm, for instance.
Do our passes come from the Friends? I thought
But they count towards our materials expenditure. We are
I didn't
able
know
to
that.
count.
Okay.
That's the only thing that if when we acquire anything within our budget, the only items that we can account, the only type of expenditures that we can account, if it's funded by some other agency other than the library or the town, is materials. So they allow us to count what the Friends purchase, if there were any grant funding, that kind of thing. What the state is now saying is they're looking to say, well, you can't count those expenditures if you're not making them available to all residents of the state.
I was going to ask, why are they doing it? That's the answer.
Yes, right. So I understand the philosophy, but I don't think they have the practical implications of how many libraries will drop services because they will not be able to afford that, or that the access will be so diminished if they open it more broadly. So that is something I'm going to keep an eye on. It would have implications for budget, but also more likely policy. We would have to come to the board to have the board decide, are there certain things we would want to open up to all residents, and thus allow it to be counted for materials expenditure requirement. That's something we're working through right now, as I said, in terms of communications with the state staff. That would have a budget implication, because some of our most expensive items, such as databases and museum passes, are limited to Shrewsbury residents only. So,
And with the library of things that we're developing, how about the things that we purchase? Are they considered library materials?
they are considered library materials. Anything that can be loaned or used by a patron is considered a library material. Previously, that was the only description. Now they're saying and available to all. So we will have to look at that in terms of policy and in terms of access.
So as a hypothetical, if I'm coming from another town and I come to the Shrewsbury Library, I go onto our computers, I can't use the databases?
Oh, you can use the databases in-house. You can't use them remotely. And what they're saying at the state level is equitable access.
Okay.
So if a Shrewsbury resident can access that streaming music content at home, they feel that others should be able to.
I see.
So they, as I said, they have since that meeting backed off of the databases a bit, but they're still holding on to the others. And the biggest question for us would be the museum passes. We spend about $10,000 a year on museum passes.
Oh, wow.
And as you know from our materials expenditure kind of challenges, where every dollar counts to helping us meet our certification requirements. So we really do want to make sure that we can do everything we can to keep that.
Sure.
Do we do
passes.
tracking on the passes to make sure that we're getting our money's
Oh,
worth out
yes.
of them?
Yes, yep.
Oh, yeah, if you don't reserve ahead of time.
No, I was wondering
No.
if you monitoring usage to make sure that.
Yes, we have
actually,
dropped some passes
Yeah,
that just
they weren't
haven't
as popular.
been. And sometimes there are passes that are very low cost that we keep because they'll get, maybe a lower use, but they're still getting used, but they're just so much less expensive. The Museum Pass program used to be very low cost for libraries, but over the years, museums have increased the fees, increased the amounts that patrons have to pay when they use those passes. The model used to be all free passes, very few limits. Now they tend to limit it more. The cost to the library is greater, the cost to the user is greater, but they are still tremendously popular. If you get $10 off per person for a museum, that's a
Makes a
huge savings,
difference,
right?
Yeah.
And it really does facilitate visits for people who wouldn't be able to visit the museum. So that's kind of the rationale behind having them. They're very popular and they do provide access to cultural experiences and enjoyment and all that. So that's one, I know that will be something we need to consider,
Yeah.
depending on the outcome of that.
Since this is such a draft, I think it's a work in progress. We don't need
Exactly.
to act on it right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, so all of the other things are pretty standard. The only thing that I've added are under the program, services and programs, is continue to support the efforts of the Library Foundation as it works to build the endowment. Excuse me, making that a focus of the budget. Excuse me.
Okay. All right, so we'll look, see how this
Do you think
develops.
we're ever going to succeed with getting increased library page hours?
I hope so. I mean, the demand is
I know.
incredible. The circulation
I look at it-
volume is just
I know.
continues to grow, so I hope so. Even if it's small amounts, every
Yeah,
hour
we do
that we
get
get
some,
additionally,
but yeah.
yeah.
But it's like, it's there all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I'm wondering, I've said this before, if, we should look at the volunteer program and think about maybe some ways we could configure that.
Well-
Like, I know people don't come every week, but I'd be willing to do some shelving, but I can't come every week, but if
Yeah.
I was part of a team that did that
Well,
slot,
that's a good
I
idea.
could do it.
Yeah.
I know other volunteer
We do have
agencies
volunteers
do
who
that.
help with shelving, but we do limit it to those that we can really have a dependable
Yeah.
schedule,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
it's so essential. If you start backing up in your shelving,
Yeah.
the impact in the automated handling room
Yeah, right.
is
Oh, I can imagine,
tremendous.
yeah. But, if I was part of a team of 3 that took Friday morning,
Mhm.
I could do that.
I can't
Yeah, I
this
can't
Friday.
come every
I can't this
Friday.
week because I'm doing Wise on Friday. After November I can.
See, Joan and I can take Friday morning. All right, just to kind of
If you put
think
guilt
about
in
it.
us, we'll make sure we're there.
Well, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of people retiring,
Mhm.
and people with some time, and I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of goodwill out there, and, it may be that we
Right.
could think about some ways to get these people in here.
Well, I think that we have used volunteers, and we continue to use volunteers in ways that are a good balance between the training needs, the oversight needs that we have, and, that scheduling issue.
Yeah.
There are some volunteers who are very able to handle shelving. It sounds like such a simple thing. Shelving is incredibly complex because of the range of identification labeling we do and the range of locations. Our pages consistently have problems putting things away. I mean, it is, probably Dean could support that idea, because Dean does a lot of the processing work in the tech services department. We train pages for a good 6 months before they're really comfortable to
Oh,
work.
wow.
I used to shelve on Saturday afternoon, and nobody trained me, but I managed to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I know, it seems like, it would be simple enough to say to someone, yes, you could shelve movies or fiction or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But to have someone who would have the ability to step in for wherever the collection backup is and say, okay,
Yeah.
you need to go do biographies and nonfiction, and you need to do the teen gaming area.
Yeah.
That requires a good amount of training, and it requires consistency. That's the issue, because
Yeah.
things change so dramatically in our collections. We're constantly shifting collections that you have to be on the job a lot to really do a good job with it.
Becomes a physical problem for some folks too.
Oh, if you have to go
It
bend
is a hard
down.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
someone who doesn't like to do the children's room because you're
Yes.
always on the floor.
It is, yeah, the
Very
children's
close
is
to the
really hard, the
ground.
picture of a
Children's
collection.
room.
Yeah,
That'd be the end of me.
yeah, it's really hard down there.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, definitely, what we tend to use volunteers for in terms of collections is shelf reading, because that's so essential for us. And that can be done in segments as time allows, which, you know, it doesn't cause backups
Mhm.
to kind of standard kind of flow of materials in the building, but it helps us tremendously.
Just make sure everything's in the right place.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
that's a huge
A
goal.
question, Ellen, does any league keep an ongoing list of people who are interested in volunteering?
Mhm, yes,
Okay.
and then we do the volunteer fairs and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I don't have the numbers in my head, but I know it was close to 5,000 volunteer hours last year and close to 500 people.
Wow, that's great.
And at some point, I hate to sound like I'm discouraging further volunteers, but you do reach a tipping point about how much you can manage in terms of additional people in the building and supervising and
Oh,
training
no question.
with the existing staff levels you
Yeah.
have. And in many areas, I feel that we have reached that we are making very good use of volunteers, but that there's always a cost related to it. The most important benefit of those volunteers, beyond the work they do, is the relationships that you build with people who are not librarians, who then come to understand more about the library and become advocates for the library. So it's a really important program, but it does have its limits,
Mhm.
you know.
No question. You don't need to be spending time training when you could be doing your own work.
Who does most of the training, Ellen?
In the department, so Annie Lee is our volunteer coordinator. She does the recruitment, she does the initial training session, and then they're handed off to the department heads. So if they're working in circulation, they're trained by staff in circulation or tech services or wherever. So that department then becomes responsible for the ongoing management and supervision of that volunteer. Unless there are some kind of common projects which we will pull people periodically. You know, we have a big processing project, so we'll pull people from different departments and ask them if they could help with that. And most people are open to that. Excuse me.
Okay. So we'll be talking more about that as time goes on. Next is facilities and grounds and update on the project to add doors to the quiet reading room.
Right. So the facilities subcommittee has looked at the question of adding doors to the quiet reading room after the last meeting, and we discussed the potential use of library state aid for that. I met with Keith Baldinger, who's the head of public facilities, and he explained that NALT architects are on contract to the town, and he had them come in to take a look at that. And they have provided a proposal, and what this is a design proposal. It's not the proposal for the work itself. So what this proposal is suggesting is that we could come up with, NALT would come up with a schematic design with preliminary costs and drawings that include the scope of work, a construction document package that would meet the state procurement laws, handling the bidding phase in conjunction with the town of Shrewsbury, and construction administration, including a number of project meetings and punch list inspections and so forth, as you can see here. What's not included in this proposal is consultants, because we're assuming that they have the in-house staff within the architectural firm to be able to deal with it. There's no set budget, because it's not a budget that needs to be administered in the way a large construction project would be. It could be administered in-house, not by the architect. And again, no schedule. This would be worked out if we went forward. And the fee for that is $3,000. What's excluded from that fee is if there were any engineering studies needed related to the installation of the doors. And what's being proposed is something very similar to the glass doors that exist on the local history room. And the reason being is that we want to be sure that we have something that we can see through to the quiet reading room from the reference, right, from the reference desk. That was one of the major features of the design of that top floor, is being able to have visual supervision of the whole area. The other piece that the architect suggested was the addition of acoustic treatment panels to the stairwell, the new stairwell. She explained that that can have a tremendous impact of keeping sound where it originates. And as we discussed in the facilities subcommittee, the issue is often sound coming up from the lowest level all the way to the top floor, from the children's level all the way up, because of that open feel. Excuse me.
So at this point, it's $3,000 if we want to go to the design phase, is that, am I interpreting what
To
you're saying?
provide the design work for this proposal, yes. So that essentially what would come back is a cost estimate, a design, with, a schematic design that you can look at and see what would this actually look like, and all the other services here. Then there would be obviously the additional cost of constructing the doors.
Do you recall if Lamero Pagano had suggested or included doors in there?
No, there was
No.
never a discussion.
Okay, there was never a
of doors.
discussion.
Yeah,
then. Okay.
right. The sound impact of that stairwell was really something we never really looked at.
When you mentioned last time with the children, it's
Right.
been a real problem, yeah,
Yeah, and the fact that that quiet reading room,
yeah,
I mean, the purpose is quiet, and it just funnels the sound right there.
yeah.
It's an obvious problem.
Yeah,
If you're in the hallway upstairs, next to the quiet reading room, and the children come out of an event in the children's room, it can be bedlam,
Noisy.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, as far as from a noise standpoint.
yeah.
Did she have any estimate or any idea how the acoustic work?
No,
She
that's part of what would be in the proposal.
Right. Sorry, I mean estimating how effective, that would cut the sound by 50%, or does she have any idea?
She did not give me percentages, but she said that that those kinds of installations are very successful in stairwells, that they've found they are. That's all I
Okay.
have. But it's something we would have to.
That's good enough for now. That's good.
It's part of what they would study for us, is how much could that help.
Okay. So we'd have more information about that when you're done with
Exactly.
the study. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was useful.
I just have a question, because I can't picture it in my head. If you're in the reading room, can you be working on a computer?
Many people bring their own computers there. There's one public computer in there, Joan. The other seating areas are all open tables. Most people bring their own laptops and use the public Wi-Fi.
I only asked because I was here one day reading downstairs where the newspapers are. And there was a woman working on her computer, and her tapping
Oh,
was driving me nuts. I couldn't wait till she finished. And, I don't know if that affects the quiet reading room, but if you have people who are, and you hear it, but you can't say they can't
Most of the
work it.
laptops have a setting for that, don't they?
right.
Do they?
Typically something-
Yeah, I
someone
believe,
you can
yeah.
change
Oh, well, then
You
it.
can
that's
check-
good to know, because that should be something that
Yeah,
if
you
people
can
are.
set it for silent touch or whatever
Oh,
it is.
okay.
I don't-
Well, then that could just be a little sign on the table, make sure your computer's at silent touch, because it was truly a distraction.
Mm,
It
yeah,
wasn't
would
other
be.
people walking by, because I was on the first floor, it wasn't other people walking by, it was that tap, tap, tap.
Mhm. It's a function of long fingernails, however.
I don't have long fingernails.
No, I meant
There's
she
people
must
who
have.
are-
She must have, probably.
Yeah,
But it was
they may
like,
not be
ooh.
able to get around it.
But that's good, if you can put it on silent, that's
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
because then,
Or
You
even
don't
just to
hear it.
remind people with the long fingernails to be quiet.
which sounds crazy, but
Well-
I'm only bringing it up because I bet you dollars to donuts.
Well, part of,
You'll get that whole thing done and somebody will come out and complain about laptop tapping.
right, part of the strategic plan talks about the issue of sound in the building and kind of the balancing of different sound needs or quiet needs. And one of the things that we've heard a lot about is that front reading room on the first floor was originally a place where people would gather, read the newspaper, and talk with each other.
Right.
And with the furniture that's been placed there, the visual cue is that that's a study space. And it's not, that first floor is not intended to be a study space, but people who use that space walk in and it's a big formal desk. So the people who are now reading the newspapers and like to talk with each other feel very awkward about talking with each other when people are working. So that's part of what we're considering is moving furniture around. So those are just those big seats, maybe one small table, and doing some signage to designate, silence on the top floor, middle floor, normal speaking tones, children's room, it's a different world.
But what I really got a kick out of was there were people who turned their chairs to the window. So when you walked
the
in,
buffer, right.
everybody was looking out. Luckily there was one chair left that wasn't looking out, but I got a kick out of that.
But we have received complaints from the library users who used the building before we had the renovation. That was their gathering space, and now they don't feel they can.
Well, they should be able to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but the issue was the furniture defined the place in a different way, and that's something we can change. So that's part of what the staff is working with and has discussed with the facilities subcommittee about that issue of starting to define spaces better.
If you put a round table in there, it would give the message, this
Exactly.
is for talking.
Yeah, a couple armchairs.
More lounge chairs, right?
Yeah.
So we've been looking at the options for switching things out, and we have some ideas for that. But we thought we'd start with resolving the top of the stairs, giving that some buffer.
So could I get a motion to go ahead with the design? So moved for the 3,000?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll look forward to hearing what they have to say. Okay. Gifts and grants, the Sunday sponsorships, how are we doing?
We are doing so well. Really incredibly pleased. We have 26 Sundays sponsored and 7 left to fulfill the
terrific.
season. So that's really tremendous at this time of year. I'm just going to briefly read the names of the donors who are so appreciative of providing this service. Had an anonymous donor, the Shrewsbury Rotary Club, St. Mary's School, the Matthews family, Bill and Jean Stewart, Shrewsbury Education Foundation, the Bacini family, Dean Park Grill and Pizza, a spelling error, the Delgado grandchildren, Drea, Dylan, and Devin, Dr. Dale and Mrs. Melanie McGee, Olivia, Peg, and Dawn Harbert, in memory of James Heedles, Jay Summers, in loving memory of Bucky Summers, Central One Federal Credit Union, Daniels Insurance Agency, Pam Osborne, in memory of Harry Dur Haratunian, Selectman Beth Cassavant, and Pat Silvestri, in memory of Elizabeth Woodruff.
And then this starts in October?
Starts the first Sunday in October. We'll be putting promotions out about that very soon. Many of these donors are donors who have provided for years. And so pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Very popular day.
Many thanks to them, because it's a busy day.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, policy, we had a number of policies to look at. First of all, the library tools linen
Right.
policy.
And unfortunately, we didn't get the highlighting on this one, but the change here was before the discussion I mentioned to you earlier about the interpretation on the materials expenditure requirement, is that we realized at the update that we had done on June 25th of the Library of Things lending policy, we forgot to include that they must be a Shrewsbury resident.
Oh.
So the staff is recommending that. It might be something that comes back in the future if we feel that's a necessity related to the materials expenditure requirement, but we would like to recommend that now.
Sure, okay.
And that's in the first item.
Sounds reasonable to me. So can I have a motion to accept the modification?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next policy is on library collection development.
Right, and this is This is a large update and a large review and update that
Yes, it was
involved
huge.
many, right, involved many staff. So what I thought I'd do is just kind of highlight where the updates are or where the changes are. First of all, we updated obviously the mission and vision statement to reflect our new strategic plan. We updated the community analysis and the library services, which are kind of the bedrock of what you use to select materials. Then it's pretty standard until you get to the individual collections on page 5, where there's a breakdown of children's collection and the young adult collection. We have gone back and forth over the years for the age breakout on this. And we feel now that we would like to stay with the idea that grades 6 and under is part of the children's collection, and grades 7 through 12 is a young adult collection. At 1.6 excuse me, was in the teen collection and so forth. We feel it's a good break sticking with where the schools are. On page 6, the reference collection has a new emphasis on online technology, and we state pretty clearly our preference is online reference content, and that we will provide print content as appropriate, and if that's the option that we have. Another change or clarification is on page 7 under gifts and donated materials. Because of complications related to recycling of books, we have made it very clear that we do not accept everything that's donated to the library in this new policy update. We make it clear that we only accept items that fit into our collection or can be given to the friends. Otherwise, we have to return them immediately to the donor. So we ask now, as you may have witnessed if you've been here at the library, when people bring in donations, we have to go through them, and we take what we can use and we return the rest to the patron. So we're making that very clear. And then the appendices are very standard documents that come from the Library Bill of Rights and other documents espoused by the American Library Association. And then the statement of concern is a pretty standard statement that a patron would use to register concern about a book.
We'll see about that later.
Right.
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the changes?
I move to accept the changes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the next one is privacy and confidentiality.
This is mainly predominantly technology related, as you can see from reading the policy. Our technology staff went through it mainly to clarify and help people understand some of the ways that technologies work in public libraries or technology access. So there's clear, especially towards the very back, you can see lots of changes. There's much more clear description of what happens when you're finished using a computer, that it is wiped clean. So we try to warn people that data is not something we can protect for you in terms of if you create a document on the computer, it is not going to be there next time you sit down at the computer. Our systems are made to clear out. We also give standard warnings about the general susceptibility of online technology and online communication, especially as it relates to financial data, and the fact that at public computers, people need to remember basic things like signing out of their accounts, all that kind of stuff. So it's just a re-emphasis on that for patrons.
I had a question, about, you always hear about these malware coming in emails, and, people, I'm sure, read their emails on our
Right.
computers. Now, what if they clicked one of those links that was supposed to download malware? What would happen?
That's why we spend a tremendous amount of money on security, on software tools that help us keep malware and viruses off of our computers, the individual computers, as well as network-wide.
It wouldn't install if they clicked it?
No, and when that patron closes out, that computer is cleared to a fresh start. Now, it doesn't mean that we're never that things could not get by. They could, but again, I'm gonna knock on wood today. We have been successful in not having any major incidents.
That's great.
Okay.
But there's a tremendous amount of money and time spent on maintaining all the software
Sure.
and systems that control that. Both in terms of the public hardwired computers and the public Wi-Fi.
Subject to change at any given moment.
Yes. Mhm.
I was wondering about the statement, confidentiality rights on circulation records are forfeited when a patron has overdue materials.
Right.
What do you mean by
Right,
that?
so Mass General Laws says that your records are private and confidential. If you keep items overdue, we do not have a responsibility to maintain the confidentiality. If we had to, for instance, mail you something and it was opened by
I see.
someone in your household, we cannot maintain confidentiality on that billing of that item.
Yeah, okay.
Or if there are some libraries that go to billing agencies to collect fees for overdue and lost items, the state law allows that under that.
Okay. And there weren't
Parents
any
also-
changes to that one,
Also,
really?
parents looking for information on materials their children have out, we can give once they become overdue, we can give the information.
So, a motion to approve the changes?
I move to approve the changes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then we have another one, that's on library cards.
Right, that was added a little later.
It isn't on the agenda, but I
Yes.
noticed the file was
Thank you,
there.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So this review of this policy came about because we started looking at the number of children who arrive at our library with adults other than their parents or guardians. So they might come with grandparents, they might come with the
Nanny.
neighbor, a nanny, and so forth. And I was very concerned that we not turn a child away from getting a library card if the right person isn't with them.
Mhm, mhm.
So we have used a model we already have in place for people who have had a recent change of address, where you allow a person to get a card, take out 2 items, and once they can come in with the confirmation of their new address, then we open up their limits to beyond 2 items at a time. We're proposing to use the same model for that child, so they could get 2 items, have the grandparent, for instance, sign the form, bring it home, have mom and dad fill out the form and return it to us, and then we open up the limits on the card as a way to making sure kids don't walk out with a refusal on it, on their library card. Especially, the biggest issue we see is grandparents. Many people who visit the library with their grandchildren.
Yeah.
And we want to encourage children to have cards, not ever discourage them. So that's what that change is talking about. And we already have a mechanism in place to make that work.
Now, this wasn't related to a change, but I was wondering what the Shrewsbury list of men and women who are 17
Oh,
year of age
It's
or
like the
older, what
voters,
is it?
it's like the voters list.
Wait, is it
That's the
online
official-
somewhere?
No, it's a printed document maintained by the town clerk.
Oh,
It's at
okay.
the reference desk and at the strike desk anytime you want to look at it, yes. We use it as a way, especially for teenagers who don't have IDs, a lot of students don't have IDs, to
Yeah,
get us the confirmation on the address.
oh,
That's a
interesting.
good idea.
Yeah. So we go out of our way to try to find a way to provide a card for someone. Network policy requires an ID. We work within the constraints of that by giving these options when people don't have that.
Can I have a motion to approve the changes?
So moved.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Next is personnel. It's about the search committee. I'm pleased to say Kevin McKenna's not here tonight. He's chairing the search committee, and Dean is on the search committee, as is Nancy and Deb. Everybody has accepted our invitation to join the search committee, which is
Great.
wonderful. So we have Sonia, our children's librarian. We've got our town manager, Kevin Mizikar. We've got Susan Shelton, who was a former librarian in Leominster, and we have Ashish Kalabji,
Kalabji, yep.
who's been active with
Archie's
the,
husband.
yep, who's
That's
been active
great.
with the Friends.
Right, he was active in our earlier strategic planning process too.
Yeah, he looks like quite a busy guy.
Yes,
So, looks like a wonderful committee, and they're gonna have their first meeting October 2nd at 4 PM.
yes.
Here somewhere.
When
Yes.
is the ad going out?
I don't know exactly, Joan,
Oh, the
that's one of the
committee
things
has
they
to
have to be
figure-
working
they had to
on.
get that
Yes,
through,
I
yeah.
forgot.
and I have a
There's a
general
committee.
timeline in my head of
Yeah,
what they've
yeah.
said, but.
I forgot.
Okay, next is Friends. They're having a meeting, their
Yes.
annual meeting on October 2nd.
Right, and
That night is so busy.
I know.
I've got like 4 things to do that night. Unfortunately, I can't go to this.
If I could take a moment to just read the details of that, so people know about it. As part of their annual meeting each year, the Friends have their, a very brief business meeting, which starts the opening of the meeting, but then they always have some really interesting programming. And this year, it's playwright Carol Cohen, who will be doing a historical interpretation of A Visit from Eleanor Roosevelt. And I also understand that they're serving Eleanor Roosevelt's favorite dessert at intermission.
Angel something.
Angel, yes, something. So that is Wednesday, October 2nd at, the business meeting starts at 6:30. The program starts at 7, and everyone is welcome. You do not need to be a member of the Friends to attend that. We really encourage people to take advantage of that nice
Yeah.
program.
When I was at the White House, her picture, because they have all the first ladies, was beautiful.
Oh.
She isn't a pretty lady,
Mhm.
but they did it with one big and then 2 other smaller portraits of things that she was involved in.
Oh,
It was
wonderful.
so moving to see, what a great lady.
Yeah.
There wasn't
Really
much she
was.
wasn't involved in.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. But I just thought, what a great picture. Whoever did it was really thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Of course, it was in the woman's powder room. It should have been outside. Well, it's not really a powder room, it's a beautiful room, but it still bothered me that it was there and not somewhere in a major hallway. But that was just me.
She did a lot.
She did, yeah.
She really did.
She's, I mean, a remarkable woman,
I think it'll be well attended.
I hope so.
I know, I'm
I hope so.
disappointed I can't go.
I'm planning it, it's on my calendar. There is a special, we have one other item, we have a statement of concern about library resources from one of our
Yes. Oh, did we miss that?
Yeah. we
It's
did.
not
Oh,
out here,
oh.
I've been putting in another business here.
Oh, okay,
About,
thank
there
you.
was a patron who
Okay.
objected to a book called How to Make Out. It was in the young adult room, and she suggested it be put into the adult collection. Now, I went online to see what this was all about, and the plot of this book, it's not an instruction manual on how to make out. But then I think, the title could be How to Make Out in Life,
I know,
It's
I know.
it's about a 16-year-old who needs $3,000 for her math club trip to New York City. So she decides to set up a blog called How To and have experts ask questions. It's gotten very good reviews. It sounds very funny. It doesn't sound, I think, I noticed that in the paperwork you gave us, one of somebody at the desk had asked her if she had read the book, and she had not read the book. And I think that there was a real misunderstanding about what the book was about.
Right. That is something that we do try to clarify when there's an objection to a book. If the patron wishes to present it to the trustees, we do ask, have you read the book? And what specifically is it that you object to? And this person had not read the book, and she was objecting to the title and its placement within the teen room. This title is cataloged in other libraries as a young adult book, and we feel it is the appropriate location in terms of the interest level, the writing level, and also the publisher's recommendation for the book is for a teen location.
Now, if she hadn't read it, how did it come to her attention?
She happened to see it on a shelf.
She saw the title on the
She
shelf.
saw the titles on a display shelf.
But didn't read anything about it, just,
Jump to a conclusion.
Yeah, it was really the title.
I don't think too many teens need a book.
Right. And
listen, all they have to do is go on their cell phone.
I wish there had been a book when I was young. It saved a lot of time.
Well, that was interesting, because today there was a thing on the Today Show, I think it was the Today Show, talking about what age should you talk to your children about sex. And they were saying like 6 and 7, and I'm
Oh,
going, what?
really?
Because of the internet.
Yeah.
There is so much information that they can be exposed to, that it's like,
right.
because I stopped, whatever I was doing, I stopped and I listened, and it was like, so.
You mentioned, Claire, that, here we are approving the updates to the collection development policy, and we have this question on this specific title. one of the things that was emphasized in the collection development policy this time and in past editions of it is the idea that not every item is going to be appropriate for your child,
Right.
whether that's in the children's room, in the teen room, or the adult collection. It is the parent's right and responsibility to choose with their child or place limits with their child, but not to place limits on other children. So in our young adult collection, you will find things that are for children from 7th grade to senior in high school. Not every seventh grader should read a book for a senior in high school. We also know that students are allowed to use the whole collection if their parents will allow it. So that means that a parent has to decide for their child what is appropriate. And in the collection at large, there is something in our collection that will always offend someone, whether it be a novel like 50 Shades of Grey, whether it be a scientific text that someone objects to, whether it be a religious text or anything like that, a historical item. So the library provides materials for all, not for one specific mindset.
And I also think that if we were to adopt something like that, we're taking away parent responsibility.
Right.
Because it is a parent's prerogative to decide what it is that their children are reading or collecting, not us. And I think that that's the other piece of it. And I think you carefully select books. You know,
Yes.
I don't think,
This was a very well-reviewed book, a very popular book. Claire had asked me, could I take a look at it? I said, I'll check and see if it's in, but it was checked out. So it's a book that has great appeal to teens. It's actually a really nice story about what happens if you think you can manage something and it gets a little out of control in terms of your ability to be an expert on all life experiences.
plus it's great if somebody picks it for what they think in their head and
Right.
it turns out not to be, but they're reading a book,
Right.
provided they read it and
So,
not return it.
I conferred with both our children's librarian and our young adult librarian regarding placement, and they both felt it was appropriate at this level and not to be moved into the adult collection. As is practice, we leave the item in the collection until we bring the request to the trustees. We do not move it out of the collection until we have a decision from you.
Do we need to take action on this?
You can choose not to act, or you can choose to vote to support the recommendation of the staff to keep the item in its current location.
Oh, I vote that we continue with the recommendation of the staff to keep it in the collection.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I ask, do we owe any communication back to Ms. Thibodeau?
Yes, I would always follow up
Okay.
with any kind of request, whether it's about an item or a
Okay.
service or anything like that. So I would follow up to her with a note. I did reach out to her by phone after I received this. I did not ever speak to the patron in person. Left a voicemail telling her I would be bringing it to the board this evening, that, because of the summer hiatus, we don't meet. So I will follow up with either an email or a letter, depending on what access they have.
So does the desk have copies of this form for people to
They did, they
fill
had
out?
trouble finding it,
Okay.
because it's been so long
Since
since
you
we've
had
had
a
a
complaint.
request.
Yeah.
And what you probably noticed from the collection development policy with the form at the end that we just approved tonight, and this form, only half of it was actually copied for the patron. So she didn't even get to fill out all the specific details about what was the objection specifically in the book and that kind of thing.
She did anyway, though.
Yes, she did in a sense fill that out.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I think the important thing is she hadn't read it.
yeah, I think, well, I would not be terribly unsympathetic to this statement. I believe no book in a teen room should be a guide on how to make out. Okay, but that's really not what this book is it? So,
No, it isn't.
Right.
maybe she'll be all right when that's made clear to her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be interesting to see if it's in the library of the town, of the place where she lives.
She's in Worcester.
Be interesting to
I'm
see.
sure
if
it
it's-
is,
Yeah?
because it's a popular book. I
Yeah.
looked it up on
Oh.
Amazon too.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think she's a popular writer.
yeah. Okay, our next meeting is, any other business?
Yes, could I add one more thing? Did you want something to be?
No,
Oh,
I was
okay.
just gonna say, we skipped the third-party fundraiser.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Do you want to do that
Oh,
first?
yeah, you know what, I skipped, I went right by 8. Sorry
That
about
was
that,
where
yeah.
that's where the young adult, I couldn't believe I left that off. So that was
It's my fault.
number 8. No, I was nervous I had done that, so, okay, we're good. So we do have to do the third-party
Rotary
fundraisers.
Club wants to sell calendars.
Right, you have 2 requests before you tonight, and your policy allows 1 per season. Luckily, these requests are for different seasons, or could be for different seasons. So you have a request from the Rotary Club to have a table to sell their calendars and possibly other items that they sell. And then you have a request in your packet from the Commission on Disabilities, which wishes to place an information board about their, let me get the correct name of it, Business Recognition Program, which is a program that recognizes businesses that are supportive of those with disabilities in terms of access to their businesses. They wish to place a phone board with nomination forms for this award that they give out. And they hope to do that in the winter season would be acceptable. The Rotary Club wishes to sell the calendars in November or December, so we could give them November and then do the winter season for the folks from the Shrewsbury Commission on Disabilities. And I recommend moving forward with both of these, so both seem appropriate.
Sure. Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think, is anything else?
I have one, sorry, I have one
That's all right.
more item. I just really want to highlight one of the items out of, one of the programs out of our community reading project called Dancing Around the Hard Topics, which is based on Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal. As I've discussed at previous meetings, the project focuses on informational and factual issues related to planning for end of life, but it also looks at well-being throughout life, and especially during years where you might have illness or impairments. And so some of the things that are going on as part of the project are more kind of entertaining and fun, with the ideas, how do people embrace life despite challenges? And so we're having things like Tai Chi lessons or cooking demonstrations, or excuse me, one of the high featured programs of that project is a concert with Young at Heart Chorus.
Oh,
And-
great.
Yes, yes. This is being funded by the Shrewsbury Public Library Foundation, so this is a free concert to the public. It is taking place Sunday, October 6th. If you have never
Okay.
seen them, I encourage you to check them out on YouTube. Oh no, conflict.
I'm away.
They are a group of seniors ranging in age from 70s to 90s. They sing rock music. They have performed worldwide. They have performed on the Daily Show, on Ellen
And
DeGeneres.
there's a movie.
Oh, yes, there's a documentary about their work. They're just a fascinating group, and we are having them come to Shrewsbury on Sunday, October 6th at 2 p.m. The program will take place at the Oak Middle School. It
Oh,
is
good, I was gonna
free.
say,
There's
not
no
enough
tickets in
room here.
advance. You just show up. We know it will be a large audience, so we're fortunate the schools are providing the venue and support for that. This is what's called an open rehearsal performance. The difference between that and a regular concert is that the stage lighting and the special staging that they typically would use for a performance is not going to be there. So it's more kind of a natural performance. But it is going to be a wonderful day. So we encourage people Sunday, October 6th at 2 p.m. for a free concert.
That's great.
We have handed out all the books from that project. 150 copies of the book have been handed out. This was also funded by the Library Foundation. And so all the copies have been, between the Senior Center and the library, we've handed out 150 copies. And we've started a number of the programs. Earlier, you asked Claire about kind of an overview. People can go on the library website. Right in the front, there's a link to the three-fold flyer about listing all the events. But we also have printed copies here available at the front desk, and some have been sent to the Senior Center. A lot more are coming from the printer, so we'll be getting those out soon too.
Any other business?
Special town meeting, October 21st.
Yep.
Yep, that's
I
just it.
haven't seen the warrant yet. Is there
No.
anything that concerns us on it?
No, no,
Okay,
just a notice that we received it.
yeah. So our next meeting is October 22nd at 7 o'clock. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
So-
And it always wins. All in favor? Aye.
I always think of